There is a difference between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness drains you. Solitude strengthens you. When you stay single with awareness, you enter a sacred process of individuation, the journey toward wholeness. The world teaches you to seek completion in another. Jung teaches you to find the missing pieces within yourself. When you stop chasing love outside, you begin meeting the one who has been waiting all along, your true self. When you are single, the noise of the world begins to fade. You stop performing for others and start hearing your inner voice. In relationships, your identity often blends with another. You begin to mirror their needs, dreams, and expectations until you lose sight of your own. Solitude breaks that spell. It forces you to meet the self that has been buried under roles and attachments. You start noticing what truly matters to you, not what others expect. You see your patterns clearly, the way you crave validation, the way you run from silence, the way you attach to avoid emptiness. This awareness is uncomfortable, but it is the beginning of transformation. Without it, you keep repeating the same emotional stories with different faces. In solitude, you stop projecting your unlived emotions onto others. You realize that the love, approval, and safety you once searched for were reflections of your own disowned parts. The one you were looking for outside was always an aspect of your own psyche calling for attention. As Jung taught, everything you deny becomes part of the unconscious, and everything you avoid in yourself you meet again through others. Staying single gives you the space to observe these hidden forces directly. You see your shadow, not as an enemy, but as a teacher. You begin integrating what was once rejected, your anger, your fear, your vulnerability, and this integration restores your wholeness. In this process, you develop inner stability. You stop depending on others to define your worth. You become a complete individual, not half of a pair. The unseen self becomes seen, and with that clarity, you no longer need to chase love, you embody it. When you are single, you begin to see how often people surrender their power in relationships. Many compromise their values to keep someone close. They silence their truth to avoid conflict. They shrink their potential to stay acceptable. Solitude ends that pattern. It removes the illusion that you need someone to complete you. You start taking back control of your emotions, choices, and time. You stop seeking permission to be yourself. You make decisions from clarity instead of fear. You learn that love built on dependency is not love but attachment. In solitude, you start building emotional self-reliance. You realize that peace cannot come from someone else's approval. It must come from within. This stage is not about isolation. It is about remembering your authority over your own life. You begin to trust your intuition again. You stop explaining or justifying your choices. You see how often you gave your energy away to please others or to fit their version of who you should be. That awareness becomes a boundary. As Jung would say, individuation requires separating from collective patterns. Reclaiming your power means separating from the unconscious need to belong at any cost. You become responsible for your energy. You learn to say no when something drains you. You stop trying to fix or save others and start focusing on your own growth. Freedom becomes your teacher. You discover the strength to stand alone, not as a defense but as a declaration of inner authority. You act because it aligns with your truth, not because it wins acceptance. Every time you honor that truth, your sense of power deepens. You stop depending on others for direction and start creating your own path. In this space, you no longer fear loss. You understand that nothing real can be taken from you. You become grounded, decisive, and centered. This is what it means to reclaim your power, not to control others, but to master yourself. When you are single, you no longer have anyone to distract you from your wounds. The silence becomes a mirror, and in that mirror, you meet the child you once were. That child still carries unmet needs, unspoken pain, and forgotten dreams. When you stay alone long enough, those emotions surface. The loneliness you feel is not about missing someone, it is your inner child asking to be seen. In relationships, many people use love to escape themselves. They look for comfort, validation, and healing in another person. But what they are truly seeking is the safety they never felt as children. Solitude exposes that pattern. It makes you face the root of your pain instead of projecting it onto others. You begin to see how every rejection touches an old wound, how every fear of abandonment belongs to a younger version of you still waiting for care. This confrontation is not easy. It stirs old memories, suppressed emotions, and forgotten moments of shame or neglect. But healing cannot begin without awareness. When you choose to face the pain directly, you break the cycle of seeking love from others to fill what only self-love can restore. You start talking to that inner child with compassion. You listen without judgment. You let the tears come without resistance. Slowly, the tension in your heart begins to loosen. You realize that you are no longer powerless. You can now give that child the protection, comfort, and understanding that no one else could. Jung believed that wholeness requires integrating every part of the psyche, especially the wounded aspects we repress. Healing the inner child is that integration in action. It means owning your past without letting it define you. It means transforming pain into strength, fear into wisdom, and loneliness into self-connection. As you heal, your emotional patterns begin to change. You stop choosing partners out of need. You stop seeking validation through others. You stop repeating the same unconscious story of pain and abandonment. You start relating from fullness, not from emptiness. Solitude becomes the sacred space where you meet your deepest self and realize that nothing was ever missing. You were only waiting to return to the part of you that always loved you, even when you forgot how to love yourself. When you spend time alone, you begin to understand what real connection means. You see how most relationships are built on fear, not love. People seek partners to escape emptiness, to avoid silence, to distract themselves from the discomfort of being with their own thoughts. This creates dependency, not intimacy. When you learn to be at peace in your own company, you stop needing others to fill emotional gaps. That shift changes everything about how you connect. In solitude, you become more authentic. You no longer pretend to be someone else, just to be accepted. You speak honestly because you have nothing to prove. You set boundaries because you know your worth. This honesty becomes the foundation of every future relationship. When you stop seeking validation, your connections become cleaner, simpler, and more meaningful. You begin to see people for who they are, not for what they can give you. You listen without hidden motives. You give without expectation. You can love without possession. That is true connection, born from freedom, not fear. Jung said that every relationship is a psychological mirror. The people you attract reflect the state of your own inner world. When you heal and become whole, you start attracting relationships that reflect that wholeness. You no longer draw chaos because you no longer live in it. You no longer seek rescuers or victims because you have learned to rescue yourself. Being single gives you the space to refine your emotional clarity. You learn what kind of energy feels safe, what kind feels draining, and what kind feels forced. You become selective, not out of arrogance, but out of self-respect. You prefer depth over attention, peace over drama, truth over comfort. When you finally connect with others from this place, the experience is different. There is no competition, no control, no fear of loss. There is mutual respect and shared growth. You are not trying to complete each other. You are walking together, both already whole. That is the paradox of solitude. The more you learn to stand alone, the more capable you become of real love. You stop clinging. You stop chasing. You meet others as equals, not as saviors or replacements. Your connections stop being an escape from yourself and become an extension of your self-awareness. True connection begins only after you have met yourself fully. Until then, every relationship is a search for something that only solitude can reveal. When you are single, your energy is no longer divided between constant emotional negotiation and self-preservation. You have time, space, and focus. This is when your true purpose begins to surface. Purpose does not appear in noise. It emerges in silence. When you stop chasing relationships, you create room to hear the inner calling that has been buried under other people's expectations. Most people lose their direction because they spend their lives adjusting to others. They adapt their goals to fit love, comfort, or approval. Solitude ends that compromise. It strips you back to what is essential. You start asking real questions. What am I here to build? What do I stand for? What brings me alive? These questions awaken your individuality. They force you to take responsibility for your existence. Without the distractions of constant companionship, your creative and spiritual energy rises. You begin to act from inspiration rather than reaction. You take risks, start projects, explore new paths. You learn that purpose is not found through others but through inner alignment. This clarity becomes your direction. Jung said that each person must become who they truly are, not who the world wants them to be. This is individuation, the process of fulfilling your own potential. Staying single gives you the freedom to follow that path without compromise. You can focus on your work, your growth, and your evolution. You begin to understand that your value does not depend on being chosen but on being useful, creative, and authentic. You also start seeing how purpose transforms loneliness into meaning. The same energy that once went into longing for love now fuels your growth. You start building something larger than yourself. You channel your emotions into creation. Pain becomes art. Solitude becomes power. As your purpose unfolds, you stop measuring your life by relationships. You start measuring it by impact, growth, and alignment with your inner truth. You become someone who adds value to the world instead of someone who seeks constant reassurance from it. In this stage, staying single is no longer a condition. It is a conscious choice. You stand where few dare to stand, alone, clear, and fully alive. You realize that the real relationship is between you and your purpose. Once you commit to that, everything else, love, success, peace, flows naturally. Staying single is not a rejection of love. It is preparation for it. It is the sacred pause before true connection. When you learn to stand alone, you no longer fear being alone. That is freedom, and freedom is the foundation of love.